Haqiqatjou, being a little naughty Pikachu he is, he created a thumbnail with me mid-sentence, like, so it's like this, and he put that as a thumbnail. I mean, how childish is this? Like, so it's like this, and he put that as a thumbnail. I mean, how childish is this?
I mean, don't embarrass yourself in front of me.
Depending on someone who's going to be making serious points, like every opportunity I get to make fun of him, I will make fun of him.
That's right, that you sure are very excited about. Can you quickly tell us about that? What is going to happen in 2 days?
Yeah, look, I'm very excited. I mean, people lose sleep because they're nervous or something. I'm losing sleep because I just can't wait to get in the ring with your old friend Haqiqatjou.
You couldn't have a hierarchical organization. Islam recognizes this about family. Patriarchy is hardwired into our DNA. Neurobiologists, psychologists, they all just in the modern West have collapsed because they're egalitarian. Islam says, no, if you want a strong society, you have to have strong families. And if you want strong families, they have to be patriarchal.
I'm sorry to say this in advance if this debate gets rough and out of hand, because it's very hard to respect my opponent. And pick some of my arguments and responses. Why? Because atheists are self-critical. That is the beauty of it. So I don't judge the winners or losers by popular opinions of others, because so we can deduce that having Sharia is not just useless, because it doesn't serve any purpose, it doesn't lower the crime at best, but very dangerous at worst.
My main point today is simple. Sultan and other ex-Muslims are playing a con game. They're being dishonest with their audience and sometimes outright lying to them. Today I'm going to focus on 3 of their biggest lies. Lie number 1. Promoters of human rights like Harris claim human rights are a beacon of hope. Human rights are the mark of civilization and progress, and everyone should adopt human rights. But is this true? Do human rights bring prosperity and progress? 192 out of 195 countries of the world have officially adopted the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's 98% of all countries in the world. Do we see prosperity and progress in these countries? Let's look at the GDP per capita. North America is at $61,000 per capita. Western Europe is at $54,000 per capita. Australia and New Zealand are at about $55,000. These regions are at the top of the heap. It must be because they're so strong in terms of human rights and democracy, right? But let's compare that to Eastern Europe. Just $9,000 GDP per capita. Latin America is less than $7,400 per capita. India, the world's largest democracy, is only at $2,000. Sub-Saharan Africa is at $1,500. For Muslim countries, the average GDP per capita is $7,500. And if you exclude the oil-rich countries, the number is at $4,600. So when people want to say Muslim countries are economically behind because of lack of human rights, the reality is Muslim countries are at the same level as most of these human rights respecting countries. Other side of the coin, you have countries that have openly rejected human rights and democracy, like China, which has a GDP of $10,000, and Singapore, which has a GDP per capita of $65,000. So either way you look at it, there is no correlation between adoption of human rights and democracy with economic prosperity. Harris, you need to explain this. These countries that have nothing to do with Islam, that have adopted human rights and democracy and women's rights and LGBT rights, why are they stuck in abject poverty? Because you want to blame problems of poverty, problems of violence and social dysfunction on Islam. So how do you explain these countries that have nothing to do with Islam, that have these same problems and often worse problems?
Sharia base their argument on the claim that it is objective morality because it comes from the creator of the universe. Therefore, whatever he says is true, and by their definition, this is objective morality. We cannot understand why it is like that, but since he's saying it, therefore it is objective and inherently good. Even you haven't said anything yet. So let's just keep digging further into Sharia. And then the problems that you're pointing out, some are valid, some are not valid. But either way, you make a mistake claiming that Sharia is somehow the solution. And this is what I'm exposing right now. Sharia is not a solution. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm talking about slavery. Okay for you, yeah? I'm particularly troubled by sex slavery. Islam and Sharia literally allow you to go to a neighboring village, kill their men, and take their women as sex slaves.
Okay, my claim again is that liberal secular human rights regime has been a disaster for the human race. Note that in Harris's response, he didn't address any of my questions, so we're going to see if he's going to answer anything in this debate. Harris is completely misrepresenting Islamic law. In Islamic law and the Sharia, there's no obligation at all times to fight jihad, and there's no obligation at all times to take slaves or sex slaves. This is a complete misrepresentation. Harris needs to study Islamic law and fiqh because he's clearly ignorant. He has this kind of George Bush understanding of Islam or Donald Trump understanding of Islam, where it's just about killing and murdering. This is like from intelligence agencies, basically. You think ISIS is Islam. Nowhere have I endorsed ISIS or said that, yeah, they're the true representation of Islam. You are simply misrepresenting, and so it's a complete straw man. All you're doing is straw man arguments, and you can't even respond to any of the points that I made. I responded to your point about slavery, and now I'm going to respond to the point of sex slavery. A good book I recommend is Lawrence Keeley's War Before Civilization. He explains that pre-modern war was primarily about manpower. The side that had the largest army was usually going to win, and if you had too few people, this made you an easy target for a larger group to attack you and wipe you out. This meant that women were very valuable in pre-modern societies because your society's ability to reproduce and build up the population is limited by the number of fertile wombs you have. Keeley says, and I quote, "Although the loss of even a large percentage of males will have no direct influence on a group's demographic fortunes, the loss of or gain of fertile women can mean the difference between population decline and growth." This is why Keeley argues all pre-modern civilizations took sex slaves. Again, this was a necessary aspect of war. If you did not take concubines, you were at a major disadvantage militarily because you either take concubines or your people get wiped off the face of the earth. There is no third option. So given that stark reality, yes, taking sex slaves was not only morally justified, it was morally necessary. And really, that's enough for the argument, but it's worth noting that the Sharia's rules on concubines and slaves in general are the most humane out of any other civilization. Again, slavery is not supposed to be a fun time, but Islam explicitly gives slaves many rights. They can't be mutilated, they can't be killed, they can't be prostituted. For women, if she gives birth to her master's baby, the baby is free, and she also is freed automatically when her master dies. These rules ensured that captured slaves very quickly integrated within larger Islamic society, especially after 1 or 2 generations. Contrast this with other societies in history that maintain a permanent subjugated slave class based on race or ethnicity. Islamic slavery is not like that, and that's why we see, for example, the Mamluks in the Middle Ages, who were a ruling class of Muslim slaves and the descendants of slaves, some of whom even reached the level of sultans and emirs in the Muslim caliphate as slaves. So the argument is very simple, Harris, but you haven't responded to anything that I've said. All you're doing is gish galloping, bringing in everything except the kitchen sink, misrepresenting straw man, and I think the audience sees that. I have a very simple argument. Sharia preserves marriage and family and community and the human race overall, and I'm bringing statistics, objective statistics, that if you think that family and marriage is not valuable, then say that. Say that you don't think it's valuable, so we know. But otherwise, I'm bringing objective arguments, and you haven't responded to any of my questions.
Blind.